haven't quit the podcast, so I'm going to take it that it wasn't the worst experience of your life.
We'll talk about it. Welcome back to EnterTheRealWorld.com. This is There Will Be Movies, a podcast dedicated to our favourite 25 movies from a given decade, Volume 1, 2000 to 2009. We are getting pretty close to the end with episode 24. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined, as always, by Ben Phillips. Ben, how are you?
I'm good. I spent all day building furniture yesterday. The house feels finished. We've only been living here for like 6 months.
Yeah,
so it's
well,
impressive.
yeah. The house is a project, you know.
But like literally, the room that I usually record the podcast in, I'm surrounded by books that are on the floor, but they're now on a bookshelf, and I feel like I've leveled up. The TV's no longer a little tiny stool; it's now on an actual shelf.
Nice.
Bench.
Yeah. And at one point, you sent me a picture of your TV just being on the floor, and I was horrified.
I know, and you were just
horrified.
Like, why is your TV on the floor? It's no longer that.
Yeah.
And you can see my Miyazaki movies, my Wire DVD set, and my Lost Blu-rays.
Nice.
So.
And probably many films by Quentin Tarantino. Maybe not.
No,
but...
I actually only own one film by Tarantino.
Okay, well, that was an attempt at a segue. This is episode 24. It's Inglorious Basterds, and we should just address this right now. I fucking hate Quentin Tarantino. It is a defining personality trait for me, unfortunately. It is not me attempting to be difficult. I just can't fucking stand him whatsoever. When I shared this with a colleague of ours, when you and I didn't know each other very well at the store we used to work at, she said, "Don't tell Ben, he's his favourite director." I believe that's not actually true, but
it's not. But I do very much like him. I assume it was probably like, I can't remember what it looked like. I didn't even see Hateful Eight, and I think that came out when we were working together.
Yeah, probably. But that's generally agreed to be possibly his worst film, I believe.
It's that or Death Proof is kind of the kind of two. And the fact that Death Proof came out before this one, I definitely wasn't excited to go see Inglorious Basterds.
Yeah, well, this is a point of derision that I receive from most people when talking about cinema. Obviously, he is, if not the most popular film director of this generation, certainly one of them.
I think he's very emblematic of a certain kind of like 90s director in that, I mean, obviously he works with Weinstein, which, doesn't help this at all, especially when that fucking logo comes up at the start of this movie. I think he's very film bro-y, and he never really got out of that film bro-y way in the same way that like a David Fincher did, where like he's still making movies that are very similar to the stuff that he was doing in the 90s with Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, whereas David Fincher's doing potentially more interesting stuff like Zodiac. People who went to see Stebbin and Fight Club are not going to go see the 3-hour movie about some guys not finding a serial killer.
Yeah. Way to sum up that film. I dislike him as a human being, but I also, it's not a case of, he's an asshole, but I love his films, because I don't love his films either. Like, there are a litany of reasons to dislike Quentin Tarantino, the person, from Polanski to Weinstein to, like, the many dodgy quotes he has given about, like, I don't know if you agree, but he comes across as very up his own ass. And like,
100% he's up his own ass.
Yeah.
I find him as someone who's, like, an interesting sprinkle of things. Like, I will read what his 10 favourite movies of the year are, because there's always something interesting in there. Yeah. Even if I'm going to disagree, he definitely puts his foot in it, like, more often than you'd want to.
Yes.
But I also think that he's probably one of the best dialogue director-writers that we've got at the moment. And I know you can probably disagree with that, but, like, there are things where I watch his movies, and even if we're watching something like Django Unchained, which is highly problematic for words that it uses frequently in a script written by a white man, I can still sit there and kind of go, like, but the dialogue flows really well. There is a poetry to, like, how he's written this.
Yes, he makes people talk to each other good. To just belittle that, I've never liked his stuff. I think it is overlong. I think it is self-indulgent. I think his insistence on banal, everyday dialogue, his insistence on making a scene twice as long as it needs to be, I don't like the degree to which he just references things he likes. And, like, I don't want to criticize people for throwing in homages to things they like, but that this dude wanted to make, like, this is me making a samurai movie. I want to make a Mandarin-only movie. Like, I get it. You've seen stuff. you don't get to direct every type of thing, dude. But...
Yeah, I mean, like this is literally like the 2-movie stretch now where he did. This movie is literally titled after a 1978 movie called The Inglorious Basterds. He just changed the spelling a little bit. He added a U.
Inexplicably, yeah. He spelt Inglorious the European way, and he spelt Bastards the nobody but him way. And he has been notoriously evasive about why he did both of those things.
And then obviously Django Unchained is a reference to the Django movies of a very similar era, kind of like that pulp era of these kind of things. Yeah. And obviously like Grindhouse is obviously a very direct reference to the Grindhouse cinema, and yeah.
I just feel like, I'm not saying white people can't make like authentic Eastern like samurai and martial arts style movies. It's just everything about, I don't know, I just get this intense, like, you shouldn't be making this vibe from him in general. And I think, yeah, he has done an awful lot of remakes and, like, his own version of whatever. And, you know, people lap it up. Like, I think that's another aspect of it. I think if he were just some little, not that successful indie filmmaker who didn't have this cult of personality around him, I'd just be like, that dude's an asshole, and just stop there. But I have this active resistance because he is such a, like, cult unto himself. Like, they sell t-shirts now that say written and directed by Quentin Tarantino on them. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Look, you talked me into it. Like, I haven't seen probably at least a third of his films because of this.
So which ones have you seen? I just
right.
to get a context.
Yeah, I guess we should do this. All right, I've seen Pulp Fiction. I've seen Reservoir Dogs. I have seen Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is my favorite Quentin Tarantino film.
Jackie Brown's my second favorite. So, like, it's why when you said that, I was kind of like, is this going to work? Because this is my number one, that's your number two. That's your number one.
I think it's like when he got into being like the biggest name in directing or whatever, that's when I started. Like, I don't like Kill Bill. I've seen like most of both of them, but I don't think either of them the whole way through. And then I haven't seen Hateful Eight. I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I haven't seen Death Proof. I've seen, if you can call it, half his movie, Dusk Till Dawn. So yeah, maybe I guess I'd seen, and until now I hadn't seen Inglorious Basterds. So I guess I've actually seen around half of his films.
You're missing like two of his worst ones. So because I doubt Death Proof is going to be your cup of tea. Hateful Eight I can't comment on. I generally toyed with the idea of doing it, but then I remember that they, like, on Netflix, it's a re-edited 4-episode miniseries, which makes it even longer. I'm just like, do I really want to do that? Like, I love him, but like, more of the movie that people say is kind of like his weakest is kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm into that. I did really enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I know you have your own issues with kind of a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff from that movie is definitely bad.
I think it's that thing of like, if I'm already predisposed to not like him when I hear things about the treatment of Bruce Lee and the stuff with women and everything, like, it's just gonna make my hatred burn more intensely. Whereas if you don't have the same issues with him that I do, these things do happen to even people we like. Wes Anderson, I believe, is a supporter of Roman Polanski, which fucking sucks. Many people we know and admire are supporters of that rapist man. Yeah, so I hadn't seen this. I think a lot of people have told me they think it's his best film. So you had to talk me into, like, I knew there was going to be a Quentin film on the list.
I mean, like, I've also said, like, we're not going to do Django. We're not going to do Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, this will be the one that I make you watch.
I watched the first 10 minutes of Django and shut it off.
I can't actually remember how Django starts. Like, most of my memories of Django are like when he's with. Oh no, because Christoph Waltz shot quite early in Django.
Yeah, so I knew it was coming. I knew there was going to be a Quentin film on the list. Like, I said very early when we were making these lists, I don't want anybody to just completely say, no, I refuse to do that if someone was passionate about a film. So I knew you were going to pick a Quentin film and I was just going to have to live with it. I think of the ones he's done in this decade, well, you know, I've seen most of Kill Bill 1 and 2. I have no interest in Death Proof. Like, this was obviously going to be the most palatable one for me. However, as a secondary wrinkle to this, I also don't like war movies. So you had quite the task on your hand. I also don't like long movies, and this is long as fuck. So
it is. I did have a conversation with my partner last night where I was just like, tomorrow's going to be fun because Matt's watching Inglorious Basterds. It's Tarantino, it's war, and it's long. And then she turned to me and said, well, it's not really a war film, is it?
Yeah, right. So I'll say that right now. now, this doesn't have the aspect of a war movie that I don't like, so it gets a pass on that front. But it is, I will say, it didn't do anything to dissuade my thoughts of Quentin Tarantino's filmmaking.
Okay.
Even if it is in places milder than he can be at times.
I mean, I think
because you don't know what I think of it. I
No.
withheld feedback from you until now. I didn't actively hate it, and that's the thing. I'm not sitting there. I'm not saying he has no talent. I don't sit there being like, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. There are obviously stretches of all of his movies that I think, oh, that was really good. But overall, I think it's fine. I would never really want to see it again, and I wouldn't call it out as a remarkable film. But it has some remarkable acting in it. But
yes, it does. You're kind of close to what the critical reception was at the time where it came out. Like, I think on Metacritic it's got like a 69 out of 100 on Metacritic.
It's got a really good IMDb score and not such a great Metacritic score. And I was like, oh, I thought this was revered. I hear people talking about this.
It's kind of like a reevaluation after the fact. Like, it's kind of like a film Twitter kind of like opinion that's kind of come out of it. Like, as opposed to like a 1 at the time. Like, Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian gave it 1 star out of 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, I would give it more than that. But
yeah, he absolutely hated it. But I just remember, so this was either my first or second 18 I saw it in the cinema. It was either this or Watchmen was the year that I did it. If you know my age, you probably know that I snuck in to see it when it came out. I know. I think this movie has 3 kind of perfect scenes. Because, I mean, it's actually quite an easy movie to break down, because it does come with those little chapter headings.
5 chapters, that's how I've written it all down in my notes. Yeah, so I think that deals with several of the elements we normally do. This was firmly chosen by you. Written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. His only other movies this decade, Kill Bill 1 and 2, and Grindhouse Death Proof. I had to briefly read about what that meant, that it's called Grindhouse Death Proof, and I was like, oh, okay, that's bullshit. Never mind, I'll just call it Death Proof. I also fucking hate Eli Roth.
Definitely not apropos of nothing considering this movie.
So this was released August 21st, 2009 in the US. We got it 2 days earlier in the UK. So Benjamin, you didn't really go all in on the Oscars for 2009 last time, so why don't you do that, and also just how this film performed.
So first of all, we got to talk about how this was the first year of 10 Oscar nominations.
Oh yeah, thanks. Was it Up or something like that allegedly caused...
No, it was Dark Knight.
Oh, okay.
It was Dark Knight not getting a nomination the year before, and everyone kind of going at the Academy just kind of going like, fuck, we can't... How can we...
Expand it, put in the popular ones,
exactly.
And then not give them any awards.
Yeah. The whole thing with this year is, and it's quite a fascinating year, and we'll probably get more into it next episode, so they expand it to 10 nominations, and they do include some big movies on there, like obviously Avatar's on this list. Tarantino is making bigger movies at this point, where he's actually making kind of like, he makes $20 million worldwide on this movie, which is definitely nothing to sniff at. District 9 is big, Blindside is kind of big in its own way. Well, like, there's actually quite a few high grossers. I mean, Up also is in that top 10. So like, they have done what they needed to do to expand it into kind of more blockbuster territory. I mean, even down to the point where, like, I think Star Trek was heavily rumoured to like be within the running for a Best Picture.
That first Star Trek is pretty good, I think.
I
wouldn't give it a fucking Oscar. But,
no, I think it was very much this kind of like, well, what is this going to mean going forward at the Academy Awards? And then the winner of the Best Picture is The Hurt Locker, which is the lowest grossing movie ever to have won an Oscar up to that point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like it's this crazy thing where like we do it to expand it to include billion grossers and stuff like that, and then they give it to the tiniest movie that they've ever given an Academy Award to. So let's run through the nominations. You've got Avatar, Blindside, District 9, An Education, Inglorious Basterds, Hurt Locker, Precious, based on the novel Pushed by Sapphire. God, what an awful title. A Serious Man, which is fantastic. It probably would have been my Coen Brothers pick for this decade if we hadn't done No Country. Up and Up in the Air, which probably would have been your Brightman pick if we hadn't done Juno.
Yeah. Up and Up in the Air, wow.
Up and Up in the Air, yeah. And then obviously, I mean, this movie gets a whole host of nominations. Tarantino gets Best Director, Christoph Waltz gets Best Supporting, which he wins. There's a original screenplay nomination, there's sound mixing, sound editing, cinematography, film editing, blah, 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 all those big awards. It wins 1 for acting.
And the only Quentin film, I don't know if it's ever, but to this point, where an actor had won an award for a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Christoph Waltz wins again for Django Unchained.
Oh, okay.
I think Leo should have won his Oscar for that movie, but that's neither here nor there. It's just
they were split. Command of racial slurs.
It's the most fun that I've ever had Leo having a movie, and all the movies that like he's normally nominated for, he's so grim and so dour. The fact that he won his Oscar for the movie where he's literally like mauled by a bear for 2 hours is just kind of
torture porning himself into an Oscar.
Exactly. And like, there's so many awards where he's having fun and he's like not even nominated for them because he wasn't nominated for Catch Me If You Can, was he?
No.
It's like there's performances I really like from Leo.
That's what I mean. I want him to go full Tom Cruise and do his Tropic Thunder cameo in something, you know? Just really just do a silly fucking film.
So Crystal Potts won for that one. In the UK, opening weekend, it grossed almost $6 million equivalent, ahead of other such great movies as The Time Traveler's Wife, aka that movie where a guy masturbates in front of himself, G-Force, Aliens in the Attic, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Dance Flicks. Is it a parody? Or is that
I've seen Dance Flick, yeah. It's a parody of all the dance films, like Step Up and all that were coming out. From the people who brought you Scary Movie.
So I just clicked on it. It was in the UK for 2 weekends, and then it dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I saw it for free on TV once. I was like, wow, this is not good.
I'm not going to go any further, because the next movie is G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, so...
That's the one where they tricked Joseph Gordon-Levitt into being in it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Channing Tatum made him be in it, basically, but yeah.
Yeah, Channing Tatum made him be in it, and then they tricked Channing Tatum to be in the second one, even though they killed him off in the first 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. At the point where Channing Tatum was now like an actual reputable movie star after 21 Jump Street, which is... hilarious.
Well, there you go. This is 153 minutes, as I said, long as shit. The original cut was over 3 hours. Thank you for editing it down, Quentin. As you said...
Is that? No, Sally Mankey.
Yes, I believe her last Quentin Tarantino film that she edited.
Yes.
$322 million at the box office, off a $70 million budget. I believe that made it his biggest success since Pulp Fiction financially. He spent a decade working on the script. He is reported to have said that he thought it was his masterpiece in the making, and he took open inspiration from The Dirty Dozen, Where Eagles Dare, Guns of Navarone, and of course the original Inglorious Basterds, which is spelled correctly. He was struggling to write the ending though, so instead he made Kill Bill 1 and 2 and Death Proof and did some acting. He considered turning this movie into a miniseries. Once again, I think it would have been better as a miniseries, but he ultimately did manage to cut the script down to a reasonable length. And there are many, many, many casting rumours and people who almost got parts. The most prominent of which were Leonardo DiCaprio as Landa, but he was like, this person should probably speak German, which I think is a good call in a Nazi movie.
It's a very good call, and I think only makes the movie better, the fact that large stretches of this movie are done in actual language.
Yes, I had that under miscellaneous, that I am impressed that I think only a third of the dialogue is in English, and there's a 25-minute stretch. I think it's chapter 2, there's no English, pretty much.
The whole thing where, like, they even do it in part 1, where, like, he does the thing where, like, can we speak in English? Yes. And you think it's going to be one of those movies where, like,
we'll do here we go.
But then it pays off at the end.
Yeah, I will give him that. Like, it is impressive that he got this financed and released as a big movie where there's so little dialogue in English. That's one. Adam Sandler was up for Donnie, but had to go make funny people. I
think he would have been so good as the Bear Jew. I just don't think that Eli Roth has the, like, physicality for it.
Yeah,
and I think
Eli
Adam
Roth
Sandler
looking unrecognisable. He looks like a knockoff Bobby Cannavale.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Bobby Cannavale would have been better in this role, to be honest.
Yeah, and Simon Pegg almost got Michael Fassbender's role. I have to assume that is because Quentin fucking loves Shaun of the Dead, as we mentioned on the Shaun of the Dead episode, but he was busy with Tintin, so there you go. Sam Levine replaced David Krumholtz as Hirschberg, Freaks and Geeks co-stars there. I do think it's very cool that they deliberately cast American Jewish actors as this unit of American Jewish soldiers, plus Brad Pitt.
Even if it is this whole thing where, like, I feel like that's where all the cuts from the movie are, is with the Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious that this movie is called The Inglorious Bastards.
Yeah.
And
show me your wild unit that just go around fucking scalping motherfuckers and stuff.
Yeah, there is one scene of that in the movie.
Yeah. I do like the, like, very quick cutaways they do here and there, where it's like, they've been known to wear disguises, and then it's just them standing in the road and they just shoot everyone in the Jeep and whatever. Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. And I think that's where, if he had turned it into a miniseries, that stuff would have shone through, where you would have just seen them just going on random missions and stuff. But, you know, he devotes so much of his screen time to Waltz and to the Shoshona character, who is great. Her story is fantastic, but
yeah,
it's almost comes...
there are 3 acts in this I think I like knocking out of the park in every single scene that they're in. It's Melanie Laurent, it's Christoph Waltz, and it's Michael Fassbender.
Yes, and she had to talk him into casting her because he was like, I feel you're too famous famous in your own country, and I want to just discover someone no one's heard of. And she's like, no, not at all.
I mean, like this, I think this is the first time I saw Fassbender in a movie. Like, obviously he'd done a couple of things before this, like he'd got like Hunger and all the rest, and he's in 300, so maybe I had seen him in 300 before this point, but this is what made me excited to see Fassbender in movies going forwards.
His accent isn't terrible, unlike in X-Men, so there's that. Well, he just can't speak loud in an English accent, is the problem. Right, let's do it. Let's fucking do it. Chapter 1. So, in 1941, Colonel Hans Landa arrives at the dairy farm of one Pierre Lepedit, investigating an unaccounted-for Jewish family from the area, and after several minutes he is able to intimidate Pierre into giving up the family who are beneath his floorboards, and they murder all but one of the daughters, Shoshana, who flees. I'm just going to say, I think we're going to disagree right here. I hate not being able to hear the dialogue over the music, even if the music is good in that opening bit. There's like 3 points in this movie where like the music is like loud as fuck and you can't hear anything over it. And I don't know, it bothers me personally. You may really enjoy it as a...
I did notice it on this one where I was watching it, but then I also watch all the movies that we watch on subtitles anyway, so like... I
subtitled it. It's just, it was bothering me to experience. Like I'm
I'm not sure if it's some issue with the mix on the home video or if it's something like that, but I definitely was kind of like, it's hard to actually hear some of the dialogue over this.
I thought it was intentional. It's meant to be like a cacophony of sound to show the like panic of, oh, the Nazis are coming. It
might be. I mean, I don't remember it bugging me in the cinema, so it might just be that like he's one of those people who's like a cinema purist, and so he might have mixed it for those kind of sound systems. I can't comment on that bit, but
right. So complaint done. Now let's do a good thing. Just generally Hans Landa, Christoph Waltz, just crushing it. And there are quotes about, I thought I'd written an unplayable character or something, and then Waltz gave me my movie because his audition was so good. And this is a career-defining performance. A different kind of villain. Like, he is scary, but not in a traditional way. He, like, kills people with kindness almost, but he just drops in these, like, single sentences in amongst all these, like, apparent pleasantries that, like, have that sinister undertone to them. Just when he even later on when he's, like, I don't know, he's talking to Bridget near the end, and he's, like, laughing. He's like, no, but seriously, how did you hurt your foot? And it's like, oh, dude. And you know what this dude does for a living, so it's like, the tension is baked in, but Quentin does a phenomenal job here and in a couple of other places of just really ramping that tension up of just like, how long will you draw this out? Just of him just ostensibly being like really nice and like, oh, can I trouble you for some milk? And oh, this is your house, and oh, this and this and this. Saying, oh, I've reached the limits of my French, which I'm very clearly speaking fluently. And then to continue would just embarrass us both. So would you mind terribly if we switch to English? And yeah, as you said, I thought this was going to be the convenient, like, oh, here we go, now the rest of the movie's in English. But it does play into the scene remarkably well when he does convince him to give them up, and he's like, given that I've heard no one moving, I assume they don't speak English. And then he switches them back to French and has him go along with it. And I know it's on purpose, that they almost are like bombarding you with tension to make you feel as uncomfortable as this man would, but I think this scene it's like 16 straight minutes, isn't it? Like,
yeah, again, like, you go into this movie and like, I understand your complaints about Tarantino dialogue scenes where like sometimes it does sound like he just likes the sound of his own voice, whereas what I like in this movie is that he weaponizes all of the dialogue scenes by just every single dialogue scene that's about just utter banality has this just sinister undercurrent under all of it. And I think it's why I love the kind of like the 3 conversation scenes in this movie, and I think they're all utterly wonderful, and they all highlight a different actor in them. And obviously this scene is entirely Christoph Waltz scenes. So at this point he's a German TV actor and director, I think. Like, he's done a lot of like TV stuff and he directs some of those things, and yeah, he just gets picked up for this off the back of not hiring Leonardo DiCaprio. And within 5 minutes of the scene, he is the most captivating actor you've like ever laid eyes on that you've never heard of before.
He's just getting work constantly in Oscar bait, and deservedly so. Like,
yeah, what was the first thing that you saw him in? Because obviously you never saw this movie, so like he must have kind of just appeared. Like, was it Green Hornet or
no? Like... I didn't see Green Hornet. I really don't know. Couldn't tell you. Like, I saw clips of him in this going around. Like, everyone was raving about him in this, and similarly in Django. So, like, I feel I saw a lot of him through that. I really can't remember the first, like, full film I saw.
Was it Spectre? Would it be Spectre?
I really hope it isn't, but maybe.
The last thing is, a lot of the stuff he's done is, like, he's done Carnage, which I can't imagine you've seen because Polanski, Django Unchained, Zero Theorem, Horrible Bosses 2, Big Eyes.
Horrible Bosses 2.
So it might be Horrible Bosses 2, but like that, yeah, it's this whole thing where, like...
That's depressing.
But, like, I mean, even if you look at the people he was nominated against, he's up against Matt Damon for Invictus, which he's actually doing a really good accent in, somehow. Yes. Woody Harrelson, The Messenger, Christopher Plummer, The Last Station, and Stanley Tucci in The Lovely Bones. And I think it was just so clear from the start of this Oscar season that it was going to go to Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
I think it's, like, genuinely the most exciting performance in any movie in this year.
Yeah, and one of the best performances we've seen doing this podcast, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I sent you my, like, mock-up list of, like, my favourite performances of this, and, like, 3 of my favourite performances this decade are, like, the 3 sequential winners to Best Supporting Actor at the Academy Awards. It's Anton Chigurh, it's the Joker, and then it's Hans Landa.
Yeah.
Just these 3 villainous performances year after year win the Academy Award, and
probably the 3 best villain performances of that decade, to be honest.
Yes, yeah. Like, I can't think of anything else that is stronger than them.
Yeah.
And again, this entire scene is just he's kind of asking questions, just kind of going like, "Let me just ask you where they live, what the name family members are." Like, it's utterly banal up until the point where he goes, "I can help you if you just tell me where they are. Like, nothing bad will happen to you. We'll just go away."
Yeah, you'll be rewarded. The German military will not interfere with you for the entire rest of our occupation of France, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, on some level, you want to hate the farmer for giving him up. Like, that is the simple, like, easy, like, oh, I wasn't, you know, in hindsight type bullshit to be like, oh, fuck you for giving them up. But it's like, you know, you're not there in the room with these threats, putting your life at risk, putting your daughter's lives at risk. Leia Seydow, one of his 3 daughters, who has no lines, but yeah. This is an infinitely larger topic that is being discussed in like history classrooms as we speak. I object to the slander of the good name of rats here. As a rat owner, they are not filthy at all. They're very lovely, cute little animals.
But I do like that he does the thing where it's just like, I don't know, it is slander, but it's kind
yes,
of like,
I don't know how I feel about them doing this job of like trying to rationalise out the hatred of the Jews.
I don't think he's trying to rationalise it. I think it's just, this is just how he thinks.
I realise, and also like you kind of do need to do that for your character that is on the side of the Jew haters, to like, people at the time would have had to have talked themselves into like, this is why we're doing this, and like I appreciate you have to, but then it's also that thing, it's the same as like when he writes slurs into stuff and it's like, okay, this character may use them, but then also you had to write this, and I don't know, just somewhere in there it
is definitely a grey area.
It's on a tightrope.
But the thing is, I think this movie is, I mean, obviously like Django Unchained is a lot more controversial when it comes to the topic of racial slurs, but I do enjoy this movie kind of makes a point and goes like, yeah, but no one is a Nazi should ever get to go through life and not be a Nazi again. Like, is one of the most pointed things that this movie does. It's like, it doesn't matter if you repent or do something that's like normally good or helps people at the end of the day. You were a Nazi.
I have some thoughts on that we'll get to. I thought he was going to shoot Shoshana from like an unrealistically far away distance with a pistol. I'm glad that was not a scene that was filmed, and he instead just, you know, is like, farewell, or like,
yeah, goodbye.
I think he yells au revoir.
The little things I love about this scene is I love when he brings out the fucking massive pipe.
Yeah, the Sherlock Holmes pipe, yeah.
And just starts smoking on that. It's great. I love the point about halfway through when, like, it is just a banal conversation. Like, there is nothing much happening. He's just asking about these Jews, and you don't know for certain whether or not he's here for a reason or if you're just watching this whole thing. And then the camera pans underneath, and you see this entire family looking horrified. And it just, it like, obviously you realise they must be showing me this scene for a reason, but then they take so long to actually show you what that reason is. And
I think it's pretty clear, like, before you even see them under there, that this guy is hiding them. Yeah, I
think it is, but I like that they don't confirm it for a long time. Like, this scene goes on for about 8 minutes before they confirm that they are in fact hiding.
How would you have felt if they didn't show you the family under the floorboards and it was literally just, you see her escaping and you see him shooting floorboards? Like, would that have taken away from it?
Arguably like it might have removed some of the tension from the earlier parts, but I do think that you get the payoff of the reveal of Shoshana kind of like emerging from underneath the floorboards covered in blood, and you get like this horrifying moment where like they were correct, they didn't just shoot up this man's floorboards for no reason whatsoever,
and like him being like, I have to let my men come in here and they will find anything if it isn't, unless you give me a reason for them not to. And it's like, oh, like it's the whole killing him with kindness thing where he is presenting himself as perfectly polite, but you know that this is a monster, like, and pressing him for their ages, and then when he's like, I don't know, and he makes that little gesture, he's like, roughly, come on. And it's like, I do want an answer from you, but I will be friendly about it. And
I mean, it's just, he's so good from scene 1, minute 1, and he's so magnetic, and I don't have enough good words to say about this performance.
Yes, we can agree on, undoubtedly. That is him, and I think Shoshana's entire storyline, I think, are, like, faultless entirely, like, perfect writing and acting and all of that. It's some of the other stuff where I'm like, ugh. But
that's fair enough. We move on to chapter 2, which is my least favourite portion of the movie.
Yes, so Adolf Hitler is interrogating a soldier who was spared by Lieutenant Aldo Raine and the Inglorious Basterds, who are a unit of Jewish Americans dedicated to slaughtering Nazis. So we start this by seeing Brad Pitt giving one of the more famous scenes in the movie, like the one that was in all the trailers. Like, you see, like, clips of this, like, we're here to kill Nazis, and, and his, like, borderline, like, erotic description of how much they're going to kill Nazis and stuff, and it's like, okay, I get it. It's very difficult to argue, because obviously they're Nazis, but, like, the degree to which Quentin Tarantino was like, I want to make a film where we just incredibly violently murder Nazis, it's like, I can't argue, but it is also a bit fucked up that you're doing
this is the most Tarantino-y section. Like, anything involving the Bastards is the most Tarantino-y section, where, like, the violence ramps up about 500% whenever the Bastards are on screen. I mean, like, I would say that I think Brad Pitt's really good. I think it's also a more comedic performance than anyone else is giving in this movie. It's the most kind of, like, objectively funny thing that they're doing. Like, he has more jokes that are less about building tension. Like, the entire sequence where, like, he has to speak Italian, or sorry, Italian.
I speak the most Italian. See,
it's weird that he's top billed. He's ostensibly like comic relief, and just all the kind of B movie tendencies that Tarantino has are kind of like at the forefront of any of these scenes.
Very big of Brad Pitt to put aside his evidential disdain for Harvey Weinstein from his own girlfriend at the Times account to go be in a movie by Harvey Weinstein. Such as his love of Quentin Tarantino, who pitched him the movie at the chateau that he and Angelina Jolie lived in France. All very just, what a lovely time that must have been.
And he's probably going to win another Oscar later on this year. Probably. I think he's at the forefront of like the supporting actor nominations for.
I think it's a good performance from Brad Pitt. I'm like, dude, you of all people should not be in a
100%. 100%. I think he is good. The Pete Bradshaw interview says that it's the most uncharismatic wooden performance that Brad Pitt's ever given in his career.
It's got so much like flavour to it that I think he normally plays quite like not serious, but just sort of like, I don't know how to describe it. Almost, he plays a lot of like quite nihilistic characters, or it's either that or it's Rusty from Ocean's 11, and this has got such flavour to it when he's talking about his past as a bootlegger, and like, if it seems too good to be true, it ain't, and all that, you know. Yeah, it's good stuff. The Hitler performance, I feel, I think it is very on-the-nose mockery of history's greatest monster, undoubtedly. I'm not going to sit here and fucking defend Hitler, but like, they're sort of making him come across as silly, I think is like part of Quentin's entire, like, I'm going to make a fucking anti-Nazi movie and I'm going to have such great fun with it. And they're having this like hysterical Hitler wearing a cape, like jumping up and down and shouting and everything. The Hugo Stieglitz montage is very fun when they put his name on the screen and then like show you him like murdering these 13. Is it Gestapo officers or just like high-ranking?
I think it's like a mix of them both. I mean, like Til Schweiger is someone that I do quite enjoy. He's done some absolute shit in his career. He was Jack Carver in Uwe Boll's Far Cry movie. I remember it was like, I can't remember what the movie was, but it was the movie that we were shown in German class to like learn German, because he's like native German, done a lot of kind of German comedy movies.
Yes. And he said he would never wear a Nazi uniform in his acting career, and he only agreed to do it here because his part was a prolific Nazi murderer. So
I mean, because I love when
play.
he just put the Nazi uniform. He looks so profoundly uncomfortable the entire time. Like he is just like, I do not want to fucking be here, which is a great kind of like sub element to that whole scene. But we're not on that one yet.
How do you feel about Samuel L. Jackson doing what, two instances of narration, and it's not present anywhere else?
That is Tarantino to a T. I mean, at this point, I think the only movie that Samuel L. Jackson hasn't been in that Tarantino's directed are Reservoir Dogs and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's this entire stretch in the middle, and so even to the point where, like, in Kill Bill Volume 2, he's like the piano player in the wedding flashback, and that's all he's got to do in those movies.
I just kind of think there are two movies here. There's a very serious Oscar-y movie that is entirely just about Shoshana and Landa, and then there is this ridiculous Quentin Tarantino quasi-comedy movie with the Basterds and the on-screen text and the narration, and it's like these don't... I'm not saying they don't mesh, but they are almost at odds with each other, and like he can't go full Quentin because he's making this actually serious grown-up movie over here, so it's like... Yeah,
I think that's fair. I mean, I will make my argument at the end. I tweeted about like my opinion on the kind of the final twist of this movie and how I think and what I think about what it does, and I think it does manage to make the more Tarantino-esque elements of the Bastards kind of like pay off in the end. But I can't disagree that like it does feel like they are two fundamentally different movies, and the three bits of the movie that I really enjoy are all the ones that are kind of the more serious tension-building moments as opposed to the...
I don't want to see him make it, but I do want to see a miniseries about this unit by someone else almost. But then it's like this is the Tarantino stuff. Like if that miniseries existed, I think Samuel L. Jackson would have narrated every episode and stuff.
It would,
and you would have got one of these montages for everyone on the team or whatever.
Do we want to run down who played the Bastards?
BJ Novak.
As
the sole survivor, almost. Eli Roth.
I mean, so Til Schweiger and Gideon Burkhardt as the two German-born native ones. BJ Novak, Omar Doom, Sam Levine, Paul Rust of Love.
Oh, yeah, Paul Rust. He must have no dialogue, because I saw afterwards he's in it, and I was like, I dispute that, but I'm sure he's just standing
I saw him on the screen, but it's this thing where like I remember when this movie came out, and they were listing all these people who were playing these roles, and I was like, BJ Novak is taking time off the office to go shoot
Ryan went to Thailand so that he could go and be in this movie.
For 2 scenes?
Yeah, and he gets like the final scene in the movie. I'm like, what?
I know.
He's just stood there being the only one I recognise easily who isn't speaking, and then he gets the final fucking scene. Yeah, so... Yeah,
and then, I mean, so Omar Doom, Eli Roth, and BJ Novak are like the only 3 Bastards that actually get like much to do. Everyone else is kind of like literally nothing.
Funny how they're all like writers and directors, huh? Yeah. The whole, right, so you hear about the Bear Jew from Hitler before you see him. They are interrogating a Nazi, and they're like, tell me where the snipers are, tell me how many there are, and he's like, fuck you, never. I will die for my country. And then he's like, you hear that sound? And it's like the sound of a baseball bat against the inside of a tunnel or something. And he taps this thing 27 fucking times. Twice as many as were necessary, in my opinion. And they really draw this out, and then he comes out, and it's like, yeah, he looks beefier than Eli Roth normally does, but you're expecting this, like, huge dude.
Yeah, I think, like... I don't know whether or not it works or not. Like, I think it would be better if it's Adam Sandler emerging from that cave, just because I think, like, it's that thing where, like, I do think it would have subverted expectations that little bit more.
Yeah, and he almost got too big. Like, I understand he felt the need to beef up to play this role, but it's like, you're not big enough that this is like, oh, he's a bear, but you're too big to be like, oh, he's the bear.
Yeah, I think the two things that I really enjoy about it are he does look weedier than you're expecting, and then when he talks immediately afterwards, it's in this kind of like high-pitched
Teddy fucking Williams.
Yeah, like it's not kind of like this kind of like deep Barry voice. It's just this kind of like Jewish New Yorker voice that I know. It's just this quite amusing kind of thing. Like like the difference between what the Germans are expecting him to be and then what we're actually meeting in this scene. To the point where I think after this, Eli Roth is pretty much silent for a lot of the movie after this
until the final. Him beating him to death with a baseball bat is legitimately disgusting. I know he's killing a Nazi, and we should all be like, yeah, kill Nazis, but over the top, in my opinion.
It was just quite funny reaction because like my partner doesn't like kind of like on-screen violence violence that's done in kind of an exploitative kind of way. And so I was just like, well, I know what's coming up, and I'm just like, right, you might want to look away when he goes for the baseball bat. And then she doesn't react fast enough and goes, oh, it wasn't that bad when he hits him with the bat. And then the scene goes on for like this overhead shot of them just completely pummeling his head into a pulp. And then she was, oh no, this got infinitely worse after that first hit.
I'm with her. Eli Roth, when talking about getting into the mindset of the Bear Jew, said, being in wool underwear will make you want to kill anything. And also, in a separate interview, said his girlfriend secretly added some Hannah Montana music onto his iPod, and when he listened to it, it inexplicably made him able to tap into the violent nature. Eli Roth is a fuckboy, quite frankly. Oh yeah, I hate girly things. It makes me want to kill people. It's a whole deal. And then they scar a swastika into the head of the only survivor, who is the one that goes and briefs Hitler. Now, the points he's making about you shouldn't get to take this uniform off and get to just slip back into society and no one knows what you did, I understand that. And if you knowingly signed up to be a Nazi, knowing what the Nazis are, yes. But there were very much people just involved in the war on the German side who didn't agree with the stuff that was being done, but didn't want to be killed themselves, so did just go along with what was happening. And I'm not saying... I think it's similar to the, like, oh, you shouldn't give up the Jews under the floorboards thing. It's easy to fucking say that. It's very different when it's like, you can't just be like, well, you should just stand up and, like, refuse to join up. It's like, it's easy for you to say you're not in the situation. And I think Germany's, like, handling of their own history in the decades since is infinitely more mature than the USA and Russia and China's fucking handling of the things they have done in war, and they are deeply embarrassed about what has happened and have all these laws about Nazi like symbols and stuff. And I just, some part of me is like, this isn't really helping global relations on some level. Like, the people that still are like, every German is a Nazi and I hold World War II against them to this day, on some level it's that to me. But again, I'm like, I feel like I'm arguing in favour of the Nazis, which I'm obviously not doing. But I don't know, it just comes across a little bit blurring that line of like, all Germans from 1940 whatever are scum and should be murdered. It's like, not necessarily true, but...
If you want to see a very interesting movie on this subject, Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life, about the real life story of Franz Jägerstätter, is about literally a German citizen who refuses to pledge allegiance to the Nazis. Like, he says he will join he will join the army, the German army, but he will not pledge allegiance to Hitler and the Third Reich.
I guess that is a distinction, is that like the actual Nazi party was much smaller than the the German like military force, and like there were members of I did once upon a time know all of this front and back. I did history, but you know, the SA and the SS, and it's like I think everyone in the SS was automatically a Nazi, but then like everyone in the SA wasn't necessarily.
I think the distinction is like, to join the German armed forces you have to pledge allegiance to Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich, which to some people means that you are immediately complicit, and that this guy that this movie is made about, which is really good, it's 3 hours long, Matt, never watch it, like it ends with him being executed in 1943 for his beliefs. But the entire movie is about the kind of like the principle that this man had, and how he basically was removed from history in a lot of ways until kind of like much later on when people were starting to look back to it. And it is this kind of like dichotomy of, was every person who pledged allegiance to the Third Reich bad? Possibly not, but there were still people out there that had stronger beliefs and decided that they were going to make that stand. And maybe if more people had done that, it wouldn't have resulted in the mess that it was. But this movie is very much kind of like making a point that like, because it becomes in this stage of the movie where like it is only these kind of like comic characters doing it, I think there is a level of kind of Tarantino's B-movie sensibilities where it's not supposed to be a clever indictment of the Nazi party at that point, but I can definitely see why you'd be uncomfortable with this kind of like just torture of this person.
Yeah, and just tarring every German from this era with it. Like, because again, there is this idea, when you boil it down to just the bullet points of what happened in this time, it's very easy to assume that Hitler came out before he was elected and just gave the full manifesto of, yes, I'm going to gas all these Jews, and he didn't do that. This all crept in gradually, so it's easy to be like, oh, you signed up knowing everything that this man was, but like, he peppered that in as they went along. Like, day one of the war wasn't, we're going to kill all the Jews, but this is, we're 1941, 1944-ish, so yeah, I guess that stuff was starting to come in, but yeah, it's a very difficult topic.
Like, yeah, and I see why Tarantino does it. I think it pays off better at the end than this one. This feels to me like a writing exercise in, like, we're going to introduce this thing that's going to come up later, and I think the later deployment of it is a lot more effective in kind of like what it means to the movie's kind of point of view.
Right, let's move into chapter 3. I think the second best chapter in the movie. So it's 1944, and Shoshana from the beginning has taken on an alias that I forgot to write down, but
Emmanuel Mimieux.
That's it. And she is operating a cinema. Are they in Paris, or is it just somewhere in France?
Yes, they're in Paris. They're just in a smaller cinema outside Paris that isn't the Ritz.
A Parisian, small, independent cinema. And she is harassed. Not in the, like, Nazi way, but in the, like, I am romantically interested in you unwarrantedly by a legendary German sniper and minor national celebrity, Frederick Zola, who Joseph Goebbels is making a film about. And he convinces Goebbels, because he's taken a shine to quote-unquote Emmanuel to have the film premiere moved from the Ritz to her cinema, so she starts a plot to burn the thing to the ground and kill them all while they're there. Go her. I think the opening, you know, him approaching her and trying to strike up a conversation about, like, actors of the time, I am sure all the film nerds got a massive kick out of this stuff.
I mean, yeah, this is 100% like Tarantino kind of like wanking off about his film history knowledge. This is Tarantino stroking his head at this point. He's just kind of like, yes,
yeah,
I know enough about the propaganda movies of the 1940s. I'm a student of film history.
Yes. Is this Daniel Bruhl's... Is this how he started getting Western roles out of this? Like, was he a known entity in Hollywood before this role? Because I was surprised at how small it is in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, he's got kind of like, he's been in Goodbye Lenin, which he obviously got a lot of attention for, but I think this was kind of like, I'm not sure if it's his first English language performance, but it's definitely his kind of like first big English language film that he's done. And I say English language film when this movie is done almost entirely in German. I don't think he actually says much in English at all throughout this.
No, they're speaking French, aren't they?
Oh, they are speaking French, yeah. But it's kind of like dual English-French for a lot of it. English-French, German-French.
Yeah, because this is the chapter where there is no English, I believe.
Yeah, and then, but then it's obviously a couple of years until he does Rush. So, like, it's like, this is 2009, he goes back to doing kind of like more kind of European cinema, and then Rush is 2013.
It starts with just him trying to strike up a conversation with a pretty girl outside a cinema, and she's like, dude, fuck off. And then he walks past a cafe or a bar that she's sitting in and reading, and, you know, the classic men bothering women that are trying to just live their lives. And then we get the whole, like, oh, it's you, can I have your autograph? And it just came to mind that thing that people on Twitter do where they're like, where a guy is like shooting his shot, as it were, and like all these strangers that don't know him are like, oh dude, thanks for lending me that $3,000, and oh, thanks for doing this for me, and thanks for that. It's like, oh no, please, you're embarrassing me in front of the lady I'm trying to score with. And you get this insane story about him facing down 300 enemies from atop a bell tower, and he killed like over half of them in 3 days, and then the rest just left.
But I love that bit where he goes like, I killed this many, which is a big number to kill.
Yeah. On the first day. And then I killed 150 of them on the second day. It's like, I don't believe you, but sure. And it's made him this, like, star for the Nazis, because he's done all this. And, like, you know, Goebbels, you know, depending on which historians you ask, Goebbels arguably worse than Hitler, maybe. Either way, very, 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 very bad man. And the actor they have playing him here is doing it suitably horrifically, both in the things he is saying and the way he behaves socially, because they pick her up from outside her cinema and like escort her away, and it's to this restaurant and to meet Goebbels and to be told, yeah, your cinema's gonna host this movie. And
yeah, what I quite enjoy is that like all the actors they have playing kind of like real life historical figures, in that you've got, so it's Sylvester Groth as Goebbels, Martin Wuttke as Adolf Hitler, and Rod Taylor as Winston Churchill, kind of like the three big ones that like you should know what these people look like if you've studied history, especially this history of any time. And I feel like they're
not quite right.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they're kind of a little bit off. Like they're not, it's nothing like Rod Taylor's performance is nothing like how he's performed in The Darkest Hour. before.
Or any other thing.
Yeah, exactly. But like you normally make a point of it. If you're going to get someone playing these characters, you normally get someone big. And this movie makes the choice of going like, we're just going to get someone who can do the accent, looks a little bit like them, but they're only here for like authentic flavoring, as opposed to the point of this movie is not Hitler. The point of this movie is not Churchill. The point of this movie is kind of like everyone else.
Yeah, and I think it also contributes to the whole weird alternate history thing that they're going for, in that they're just off enough where you're like, okay. I think they certainly point to them in the crowd. There's Goering as well, but I don't know if you ever see him up close. And
like you kind of get the thing that he does, where it's just like, look, we also need to point out that these two people here who are also high-ranking Nazi officials are like also in the audience. So
you need all four to end the war tonight. And just the way Goebbels, like, it's not just that he's saying shit. Like, yeah, the Americans doing well at athletics is all from like slave sweat or whatever. Or yeah, it's not just the horrific things. It's also that just like he has absolutely no social like manners, like just talking over people and interrupting and just being a prick. Like it's the multifaceted horror of him. And then Landa arrives, and you have in the Zola throughout this is trying to like be the nice reasonable Nazi, and we'll have the turn at the end, but and then Landa arrives and completely changes the entire dynamic of the room. It was already tense because she didn't know what they were doing when they picked her up in the car. She is sitting opposite like the number 2 or the number 3, depending on what I can't remember what time period he became like the number 2, but yeah. And then, here's the man that murdered my family and has potentially been looking for me all these years. And I love that they do the slow zoom in on her face as people are talking above her.
Yeah, the opening bits of this scene aren't that tense. It's just her being disdainful of Goebbels and Zola and his translator, or like Goebbels' translator. But I also love that kind of like they swap between these languages, and you understand like who can understand who at certain moments, because the only two people there that understand both sides of the conversation are the translator and Zola, because he's fluent in both German and French. And it's just this really good, it's not tense, it's kind of funny, like you get the cutaway to Goebbels having sex with his translator.
I forgot about that, yeah.
It's infinitely more comedic, but also she's not having any shit, she's just kind of going like, I don't care, I don't want to be here. And then Landa shows up, and Melanie Laurent like just kind of knocks out the park the moment he shows up, and the dialogue is going on, and just her face reacting to this thing where like, I need to compose myself because I don't know if he knows who I am. I don't know if he recognizes me. Would he recognize me? We don't know if he had a photo or anything like that. And she's so good.
She's amazing. Everyone clears out, and she's just been left alone with Landa, and you just have this thing of like, does he know? And like, he doesn't. I don't know if he ever knows. I assume he doesn't ever know.
I mean, but the thing is, he says things where he goes like, what will I have? I'll have
she'll have milk.
She'll have milk. It's that kind of thing. And I doesn't he go like, you seem familiar, or there's something else where he goes like, they hinted it, but like they never.
I had one more question for you. I don't remember what it was. But it's like, him ordering like German food in Paris and being like, it's not bad here, because there's, most other countries don't make another country's national dish very well.
The strudel is great. Wait for the cream, la creme.
Yeah, that's the stuff where it's like he's being nice, but then there is that like, hey. And also like, I believe at the time this would have been made using pork. And if she is Jewish, that's obviously not kosher. And, it's like, it's all adding to, like, does he know? And then, grilling her about the cinema, grilling her about having a black employee, insisting that she runs the projection tonight and everything. And then when he leaves and she finally does that big gasp, because she handles it all so fucking well, like, and then just showing that trauma after he's actually left the room and she's safe to react. It's like so good. And
so good. Again, like I think it's the only extended scene these two get in the movie, and they're both superb.
Yeah. And then like after she's shown them around and she goes to Marcel, her black employee, and like they hatch this plan, and it's like this really niche fact about like the nitrate film that they bring Samuel L. Jackson in again for, and they show this like archive footage of like, you can't get on a bus with this, like it'll blow up. It's like, okay, I get it, Quentin, you're a film nerd.
Fun fact, Melanie Laurent's father is the voiceover artist for Ned Flanders in the French version of The Simpsons.
Great. Chapter 4, we meet Lieutenant Archie Hickox, something like that, who is brought before Winston Churchill and Mike fucking Myers. I can't hear past the Austin Powers voice. Like, he's good. It's just I can't hear past the Austin Powers voice.
It's such a bizarre thing. I think this was the role that some people thought that Simon Pegg was going for, but they confirmed later on that it wasn't. It was the Fassbender role.
Fassbender, yeah.
Like, there was a lot of rumours about like who he was going to be and who he was replacing, because I think that there might have been someone else there was, but the behind the scenes movie is like kind of a total mess in terms of like names coming up and then disappearing without context of who they were going to be.
And like Mike Myers, like he is of British descent. Obviously he's Canadian, but like I think that's why he can do the passable Shrek voice and the passable Austin Powers voice. Like there are way worse faux English accents out there by Americans.
But I love that like that Fassbender levels up his English accent to kind of battle with Mike Myers, because like we know now what Fassbender sounds like, and obviously he'd done English language stuff before this, but like for someone who's going into this as like this is potentially his first exposure to Fassbender, it's so heightened.
Yeah. It's like, no, this dude's Irish as fuck, man. Yeah, so he is briefed on Operation Kino, wherein the Allies are planning on attacking the Ritz, where this film is going to be. So he has to go and rendezvous with the Basterds, with Bridget von Hammersmark, who is a famous actress in Germany and anti-Nazi, so she helps the Allies. The meeting does not go well. Everybody dies, almost, but let's talk about it in depth. Everyone says how good Fassbender is in this, and I'm not saying he's bad, but is it just that no one had heard of him before and he just comes in here with this like big showy role and does quite well? Because I wouldn't call this one of the like 3 most noteworthy acting performances in this film, but
I think he is my number 3, and precisely because there's little things about it where I just love the things where like August Diehl's character comes in and kind of goes like, I can't place your accent.
Oh, and that's really, really good, yeah. Like,
and it's this whole thing where like he's still doing this kind of like, because obviously Fassbender is Jewish, born in Germany, and he's got German parentage.
Yeah, and his first language was actually German.
Yeah, but like the thing is, I think I just love that like even if you're listening, you can tell that he is inflecting his German with a British accent.
I think he had to speak with a coach about basically doing a bad German accent, because he could do an authentic one, and he had to make it sound like someone doing an accent, but like not so bad it's obvious, but bad enough that it rings a bit false. And it's like this is so multi-layered.
I know, and I think you can hear it, and it's like all these little things that I really love about this scene, and I love the bit where like you can tell his rage and the little things where like he's the fake laugh he does with Diane Kruger
when like trying to make this dude go away without blowing it, and it's just like
this is probably the most multi-headed one of like my 3 favorite scenes, because this is the final one of like these tension building scenes that are just long conversations between actors, and I think this one is a triple header of like August Diehl, Diane Kruger, Michael Fassbender, and to a lesser extent kind of like Til Schweiger and Gideon Burkhardt kind of like off to the side, but it's those 3 that you're focusing on the entire time, and they're all so good.
I really appreciate that like they have to trick the like rank and file soldiers first while they're playing this like just racism filled guessing, where you got to write a name on a card and guess who you are and all that shit, and just how much racism of every angle towards Native Americans, towards black people.
The first one is a Native American, and then the one that they give to Hellstrom is King Kong.
King Kong, and then there's also the like actual Indian, not Native American Indian. There's some stuff there where they're doing like fake belly dancing. It's like, just to remind you, these are fucking Nazis. They managed to get it all past them, and it's like, oh, we're old friends and all this, and like they go away and they've like passed for German, and then the major in the SS comes around the corner, and it's like he's a little bit sharper than the rest, and like he's like that he calls one of them Frankfurt and one of them like,
he's like Frankfurt, Berlin, and like he just
it might be Hamburg, I don't know. Yeah, but he's like calling them where he can tell they're from, and then he's like, but you, and they make up this like elaborate story about where he's from, and like it resolves for a moment, but he won't go away. He wants to sit there and talk.
Yeah, this is an officer's table. I want to spend time with people. I'm here for whatever reason. He's just here on a night off, and then these other Germans are here because they're celebrating the birth of the private's son.
His son Max, yes.
His son Max, and it's just I just love like all the build up to this scene where like one problem gets resolved and then there's just another problem that they have to deal with.
Yeah, it just keeps ramping up and you're like, how are you going to get out of this? And ultimately they don't, which absolutely stunned me when I saw it. I was like, oh, is he done already? But, you know, they give him this really meaty scene, and yeah, just this quiet, again, the quiet tension. Like, no music, just this tense dialogue and knowing the situation they're in, and if they get caught, they will all be killed, and they think they've gotten rid of him, and then he just keeps staying, and then he's given away by the fucking 3 fingers in the air. Like, such a tiny detail.
That someone that high-ranking in the Gestapo would notice.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing, I appreciate they're not making them all idiots, you know, like, they were very fucking good at this, at finding people, and like, there's a reason they got as far as they did. They weren't inept, and like, seeing this scene playing out, and you're like, when is he going to find him out? He's gotten away with the voice thing and gotten away with how they know each other and why they're here, and like, what are you doing in France? He's like, oh, do you know every German in France? He's like, all the ones worth knowing. And it's like, while they've resolved that slightly, it is still like, dude, I would know about you.
Like, you are too high a ranking to like do this, especially someone who's in to be escorting Bridget von Hammersmark.
Yeah, why is there a German captain here escorting a film star? Yeah. I really like when they start actually pulling the guns on each other, and he says, I'm a real Frederick Zola at this rate. Like, it's a really nice piece of like attention to the world they're building, where they're like hammering home, yes, he is famous, like, for doing this.
But I love that then obviously Hickox then kind of goes like, oh, well, I hope you don't mind, I'm just going to go out speaking the Queen's.
Yes.
It's just this flip immediately, and yeah, this is what I think. This is the scene that I think of most when I think about this movie. Even if I do think that the 2 involving Christoph Waltz are better, this is the one that I keep coming back to. I think this is the kind of like the scene from this movie that is kind of most brought up, because it's the most hermetically sealed away from the rest of the plot. Like,
yeah, because it seems so just sort of, oh, you just have to meet up with them and then your actual mission will begin, but then his mission never fucking does begin because he's just out of it. But it's just like, it seems so, you know, you're just meeting someone, and even that goes horrifically wrong, and it's kind of funny that like this is almost the lowest stakes one of these, and it's the only one that goes truly, I guess they all die at the beginning except Shoshana, but that it goes so dramatically wrong when it's supposed to be the easiest one of these. Yeah, I was stunned that Fassbender just bites it, because I'd heard all this buzz about him in this, and I was like, I don't think he's bad in the 2 scenes he's in. It's just I was expecting him to be like the final like big pillar of the movie, and it's like, no, you just show up and fail to do the rendezvous, but you do get Bridget to the Basterds, and it's like, yeah, it's crazy, and also the 2 German-born members of the Basterds dying in this scene as well. So it's like, there go your ones that can pass for German, because that was part of the plan.
I do want to call out Til Schweiger. We mentioned it earlier, his like uncomfortableness during the scene because they're wearing the Nazi uniforms. But he's so good every time they cut to him for a comedic thing, because obviously Til Schweiger is a comedic actor by trade.
Yeah, and when the Major makes him move so he can have his chair as well, it's just like, oh, dude, please don't just stab him.
The scene earlier on where he's just like sharpening his knife.
And he's like, he doesn't seem very loquacious. And he's like, is that what you want? The loquacious tag? It's like, this man doesn't know what loquacious means.
Generally support this performance. I don't think Michael Fassbender is really good. I think everyone, good scene.
Yeah, he nails all of these, like, just silent tension scenes.
Which I think is like, that's the most impressive thing, is because quite often in Tarantino movies before this, like, there is dialogue that is incredibly quotable, and you've got things like Samuel L. Jackson can still bust out the fucking scene from Pulp Fiction about that's a tasty burger. Like, he can still do that from memory and all the rest of it. I think this is the first time that he actually uses it in like a weaponized way, where like previously it's like there is tension in that scene in Pulp Fiction, but there is nowhere near as much tension as there is in this. It's less monologues and more dialogue, which I think is like the kind of like key differences. Like, and that's not to say that Tarantino hasn't used dialogue in this way before, or that he hasn't done tension-filled scenes before. Like, I'm thinking to the scene in Jackie Brown with them sat in the car, which obviously ends with one of them dying. But this is the first time where there's most of the movie, like 3/5 of this movie, are literally just conversations between 2 people that could go and end in like massive bloodshed if someone does the wrong thing.
Yes. And they do. And I also like that they don't explain it to you until after it's all over. But, like, you get... Like, they do the zoom in on the fingers, and it's after that he's like, right. So you start guessing at it, like, oh, what's he done? What's he done wrong? Has he held up the wrong number of fingers? Has he said something he shouldn't have said? And it's like, no, German people do 3 with a thumb instead of the middle fingers. You get the little Mexican standoff that's I guess it's supposed to be funny. I don't know. But it's like, after everything we've just seen, it's like...
I think it is kind of like a breath of fresh air a little bit, but obviously it's still kind of tension filled because like Dan Kruger's sat on the floor. She's obviously wounded. She ends up killing him. The father of Max, she ends up killing.
Yeah.
They leave certain things. Like they do the close up on the shoe, I think, as they leave.
Yes.
But also we know that she signed her fucking name onto an autograph.
She sure did. And Landa like rocking up to rumble them before it's even happened. So we go into the final scene knowing it's gonna go wrong. When they're getting her patched up and like Brad Pitt doesn't trust her, so he's like shoving his finger in her bullet hole or something. And like,
yeah, that was like the other big one that my partner just kind of was like, no, not watching this.
Yeah, and also just that degree of like, why is this man like torturing this woman? But you know, it is war and whatever. But it's
I did think for a second that this movie was going to get away without having Tarantino's foot fetish, and then
yeah, she makes the comments about, do you Americans speak any other languages? It's like, yeah, that is a whole thing. Yeah, and them hatching this plan of like, you know, I speak the most Italian, so I will play your date. You speak the second most, so you know, just nod along, and you speak the third most, and it's like, I don't speak any. It's like I said, the third most. It's like, okay. So chapter 5 is the night of the premiere. Everything
comes together.
Yes,
everyone who's still alive is in this part of the movie.
That was kind of how I wrote it originally. Everyone who's still alive gathers. And it's like, if this were a miniseries, like I do sort of appreciate that level of like, we've had these sort of almost 4 disparate sets of characters, and this is where they all overlap with each other. But Landa murders Hammerschmark, captures Aldo, begins negotiating for his plan to go ahead anyway, so he can get a like good surrender condition. The theatre burns to the ground. The 2 remaining bastards shoot many Nazis, including Hitler and Goebbels, which we'll talk about. And then at the end of the film, Aldo brands Landa, and we go to credits. So let's talk about that's a lot of stuff, but
yeah, this is the most packed one. I do think all of it lands. I think it's a fantastic payoff to everything that's happened in the movie up to this point, but it's definitely the most plotty and fastest moving of all 5 sections of this movie.
So you get Shoshana putting on her makeup like literally like war paint. There's this contemporary pop song playing over. I don't actually.
It's David Bowie from. It's not contemporary. It's David Bowie from a movie from the 1990s. I think like it's not. No, sorry, it's 1980s.
No, by contemporary I didn't mean like from the time the movie was made.
Oh, okay.
I just mean it's very definitely not from the 40s, and it's like they rarely do that. Like I think there are 2 songs in the movie. I think there's another one a little bit after this, but it's like it's a little bit jarring to hear a song that is anachronistic, you know, over this otherwise incredibly authentic looking movie or whatever.
I think it's interesting because it's kind of continuing that theme where like a lot of the stuff that Tarantino pulls from soundtracks is stuff that's in other movies, and this is like this isn't a
classic Quentin, you know.
Yeah, this isn't like a David Bowie song that's from Let's Dance. This is like something that is in the soundtrack for a movie that was released around the same period.
So like Landa arrives and, you know, makes a beeline for Bridget and like rumbles the mountain climbing story immediately. Of course he's fluent in Italian, which Christoph Waltz was not. He learned strictly his dialogue for this movie and nothing else. Speaking of which, I forgot this. When Quentin auditioned Daniel Brühl didn't speak fluent French, but he was like, I don't think he can tell the difference, so I'm going to pepper in a little bit of the languages I do know, and I think he won't be able to tell. And sure enough, Quentin did not know the difference and assumed he was speaking just pure French, and then he learned by the time that he had to do it. And him just immediately tearing through this story and just being like, oh, so where was this mountain in Paris in the last 24 hours? And because, it looks very fresh. And we know he knows that she was there last night, but being like, it looks very fresh. And she's like, oh yeah, you have a good eye. It was yesterday morning. And it's like, and you got here this quickly? There are no fucking mountains anywhere near Paris. And during all of this, the camera is moving around and around and around, nauseatingly fast, in my opinion. I feel he is overly eager to show he's a filmmaker-ass filmmaker. And this is a scene where it's like, could you just calm down and just let the scene play out? Like, you've done it so well in other places.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is, because obviously it cuts, it's doing the whole thing where like, it starts off with Emmanuel and also Shoshana, Emmanuel, however you want to refer to her, in this conversation with Daniel Brühl, and I think Goebbels is there as well. And then we kind of like go up to the first floor, and then we come back down to this conversation between like all these characters. It's all done in one camera movement, but he wants to keep the camera moving whilst he's doing this dialogue scene. And it's not until I think like he starts laughing at their Italian accents that we get our first camera cut of this scene in the cinema. The cinema set, fantastic.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
But I also love like one of my favorite little bits of this is like when they're talking and he's like making them say their name over and over again because they're pronouncing it so badly.
Yeah, and Omar Doom, like the one with the worst knowledge of Italian, is the only one that says it right first time and whatever.
He goes like, "Well done," and he just like congratulates him.
Yeah,
he's so obvious about the fact that he knows that they can't speak Italian at all.
And Aldo, like standing there, like almost clearly knows, like, fuck, like, because he does answer his questions correctly, because he's saying like long amounts, and then it's not like he's coming out with like yes, like he is like when he says
it's possibly one of those things where like he has a lot of Italian family and he never learned Italian, but he can like listen to them and kind of like respond. Like it's a I can understand it, I just can't speak it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of knowledge of
where you're expecting him to like tangle him in that knot, where he's asking him a lengthy question that requires more than a one-word answer and he can't give it, but it's instead just like he just does not have enough words, and it's just like saying the name badly 3 times in a row.
This is probably like the funniest scene in the movie. Scene of them struggling with Italian,
them doing the like fucking borderline not racist, but xenophobic, like the little Italian hand gesture as they're saying stuff. It's just like, oh jeez, guys. He's like, oh, let me see your ticket numbers. He's like, oh, 0023 and 0024, those will be easy to remember, and like gives them back to them. He's like, off you go. And it's like, oh, okay. But yeah, sure enough, he takes Bridget out back and he murders her. and it's like, he has the note, and that's the actual incriminating bit, but the fact that he uses the fact that the shoe fits, there's more than one person in the world with the same shoe size, dude. Like, but it's that is the thing that is like, aha, I will kill you now. So here we hit a thing I don't like about Quentin Tarantino. Those are his hands strangling.
Yeah, they are.
And he gave a quote about how he feels most strangulation scenes in movies are bad because you know the actor is in no real danger. So I'm going to strangle you for real. I'm going to cut off your oxygen. And fair play, she agreed to it. Stupid of her. But, these things, we hear these sort of stories and it's like, you take out the part where she may have felt pressured to do this or he might fire her from the movie. And he choked her almost to the point of unconsciousness. And this is not the first story of him endangering the life of particularly an actress in one of his movies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Uma Thurman hasn't worked with him in a long time.
And it's like, if these things were isolated, I would say, hey, that's not cool and move on. But like, knowing that this is a pattern with him... whatever. I
think Diane Kruger plays her death scene really, really well, but yeah, it's unfortunate that...
National Treasure's own Diane Kruger, So, it's another great scene where he's like just tearing apart her story and like then they go and grab Aldo and he tosses out a gay slur for no real reason. Classic Quentin, getting those slurs in there. I know that soldiers of an era would have said things that we probably wouldn't say, but you have chosen to write this dialogue, so And yeah, you get this weird scene where like, he's got Brad Pitt and he's got BJ Novak and he takes them far away and you're like, oh, I assume he's going to go grab the two from in the theatre as well, but no, they are still sitting there with dynamite strapped around their legs in a quite funny little reveal as their like feet are like tapping away, like, I have dynamite around my leg. He starts like interrogating them a bit and he starts being like, well, let's talk about if I let you do this. And it's all a bit... I assume it's supposed to read as, he is uniquely clever enough to realise the writing is on the wall in terms of how it's going for the Germans, and I could get out of this favourably. Whereas if I do my duty, soon Germany will lose, and I'm fucked. But it's 1944... I think they were still very much in it at that point.
I think the whole point is they make a point of saying that the Americans are at the beach, and it's supposed to say that like D-Day has happened, the end of the war is looming, and like obviously like D-Day wasn't this definitive like the war is going to end in 6 months kind of thing that the movie's building up to be. But I think it very much they're kind of painting this idea that it's like, well, they're now coming back with a new fresh force of soldiers. The English is obviously revitalized by this. They're going to liberate France because there's no way that the German forces we do have stationed in France will be able to
hold France. Yeah.
To hold France.
Yeah, and it comes across as like, yeah, he is clever enough to know to get out while the going's good or whatever. But then, given how it all plays out, he does end up kind of looking like an idiot in the end. After the entire film, he's been the smartest guy in every room and everything. And that's how he's been able to do what he's done. And it's like, dude, they're not gonna just let you get out completely scot-free and everything.
I think it's just his misplaced idea of like honor,
the rules of war and everything. And,
yeah.
And like you get Harvey Keitel as the OSS officer over the phone, another Quentin frequent collaborator and everything. And yeah, you get Aldo talking about his past as a bootlegger and like, this all seems a little bit too good to be true. And it's an odd little, like, you're not expecting it. It's like, oh, okay. Because it is like, why has he left those two in the theatre? And it's like, he could grab them at any time. He makes that point. He's like, oh, I can get Hitler out of there. I can get Goebbels out of there. I can get Goering out of there. So you won't win the war tonight. Blah, blah, blah. And we keep cutting back and forth to the theatre because there's multiple plot lines going on. And like, at this point we see, Frederick is watching the film. And he seems disturbed to see his own actions on the screen. And it's like, he is the closest we have to a sympathetic Nazi at this point, or a sympathetic German soldier. But then he goes up and fucking kicks a door in because a woman has sexually rejected him. And yeah, so he goes up to the projection room to see Shoshana, and he's like asking again to see her, and she's like, no, fuck off, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, he kicks that door in, and Quentin Tarantino, he said that he believes that Zola really did love Shoshana, and that he believes their final encounter was tragic, and that Zola forcing his way into the room and threatening her represented Zola fatally allowing his emotions to get the best of him at the worst possible moment. Yeah, this is red flag behaviour, in my opinion. That like, oh no, he's just passionate in his refusal to take no for an answer and this big rapey behaviour.
It's weird because like I think the outcome is the correct outcome for this.
Yes.
It's more the context behind Tarantino talking about it that kind of makes you go, yeah, but it's like, I'm just going to go death of the author. The text on the screen is pretty clearly, she understands this is red flag behaviour and shoots him in the fucking back.
Oh, yeah. I just mean just the general, like, him trying to, like, say, oh, no, he did love her. It's like, dude, he kicked the fucking door in.
The thing is, like, maybe he did love her. Like, I'm not going to disagree.
I'm not saying he doesn't love her. I'm saying that, like, to hand-wave it as, like, oh, he just got a little bit too passionate in the moment. It's like, no, this is rapey behaviour. And, like,
100%, but I do think it is this very much, like, almost nice guy thing. Like, he's not a nice guy, but he's just saying, like, I'm entitled to this woman who
I've played by the rules, give me your vagina. And it's like, no, that's not how fucking life works, dude. The overly violent blood splatter after he shoots Shoshana. Again, it's like, oh, Quentin, why must you masturbate over violence? Sucks for her, because, you want her to... I mean, she does get her win, but she doesn't live to see it, because she and Marcel she's, like, given this message in English. It was originally scripted to be in French, I think, or possibly even German. She told them, make it English, the audience will appreciate it more. She basically talks directly to camera and is like, yeah, you're all gonna fucking die. And then they set fire to the theatre, and like, historically, Hitler did not speak English, so would not have understood what was happening, but, we're making a movie here. And yeah, the theatre does start burning down, and at this moment, Donnie and... Is Omar's character called Omar?
Oh yeah, Omar.
Donnie and Omar have snuck out back to try and get directly to Hitler's, like, private box or whatever, and, they kill it. I do like the little bit, like, can you get to him in like, 10 seconds? He's like, I'll have to. And then it, like, is a really short little thing, and he just does it. They burst in, and they just fucking shoot Hitler and Goebbels.
So, did you know that this happens in this movie?
I suspected they killed Hitler based on... Spoilers for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Don't they, like, save Sharon Tate or something?
It's not... They don't even save her. They just... The people who murder Sharon Tate break into the wrong house first, which happens to be the house where the protagonists of the movie live.
And they kill them.
And they kill them, and we get this kind of, like... Right. Like, if you are worried about the fetishism of violence in this movie, the kind of, like, 15-minute sequence in which they murdered the three people who murdered Sharon Tate is quite genuinely pornographic in that film.
That's the part of it. It's like Quentin being like, I'm going to cathartically work out, I'm mad at these people that this happened. I will solve this by creating a thing for everyone to enjoy where they are just violently murdered for you to enjoy. And it's like, I get the well-intentioned you're coming from, but this is gross, dude.
Which is why I think that this one pays off a little bit better, because like most of the deaths are by fire and by like long-distance gunshot. I think the only one that's kind of super egregious is the close-up on Hitler's head as they shoot it repeatedly.
Shoots him repeatedly, yeah. And like the cutaway way to like Donnie's face as he's got that like wild look in his eyes and everything, and it's.
But I still think the catharsis moment in this movement, especially this year with like all the shit that's been going on with Nazis in like real life history. This movie pays off no end, and I love this kind of like, it feels like a win to watch this movie this year.
Yeah, certainly. I did guess that that's what happened because someone likened the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to what he did in Inglorious Basterds. I'm like, oh, I guess they kill Hitler then. And yes, they sure do. In this scene, the fires got wildly out of control and burned to such comically high temperatures as 1,000 degrees Celsius, which I think is 2,000 Fahrenheit. And the fire safety people said they had about 15 seconds until they all died, and they had to treat Omar Doom and Eli Roth for burns, just standing near fire. And Quentin Tarantino spoke about it in a way of like, oh, but none of us wanted to back down and ruin the shot. And it's like, this is the kind of shit where like you hear these like wild things that directors and actors do to like get the performance they're looking for. It's like, there is a fucking line, and it's people's lives and safety. And
yeah, I mean, like, and it feels like there's more and more recently of like people being like, even down to like Daniel Craig getting injured on the set. There's, I mean, like Tom Cruise on the set of Mission Impossible Fallout, where he broke his ankle on my building I work in. Is another one. Like
Leo cutting his hand open and smearing it on an actress's face.
In Django, even the Deadpool 2 one, where like the movie, I don't even think the movie shut down for any like long period of time where the stunt woman died.
Yeah,
and obviously Tarantino is source of that, like because Uma Thurman came out and said that she almost died during doing a stunt on Kill Bill
that he pressured her into doing without a stunt driver.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff, especially on Tarantino sets, where like it feels like
I will do anything for the shot I want, and it's
but I don't know if it's a budget thing or I don't know if it is just a literal negligence of safety thing.
No, I think it's that. I think he views his vision as the thing they must all help to achieve, and like, I think he just assumes everything will be fine. I think he doesn't have a sort of level of care to other human beings that others might. But yeah, we see these two just slaughtering Nazis. We see Shoshana's film up on the screen. I assume Marcel dies because he starts that fire behind the
yeah, like he's far too close.
Yeah, because they kiss goodbye, and it's like, I don't know if you're supposed to think they're romantically involved before this, but it does very much read as a, we're going to die, we mean something to each other, let's kiss type thing. And yeah, and it's great, it's triumphant for Shoshana, and it's like Donnie and Omar just being there is almost like secondary here, because
they blow up because the timer goes off and like all 3 sticks of dynamite are in that room with Hitler, just making it even more over the top how they kill Hitler.
He burned his shot, he died, he got blown up. Yes, yeah, so all of that happens, and then we cut away to, we see that the OSS have agreed to get Landa out, and he will get land somewhere in New York, and like the history books will write that he was a double agent from the beginning, and he was a key part of Operation Kino and all this shit, and he's like, oh, I want all of them to get a medal of whatever. It's like, he's like making like a little face to them, like, oh, don't worry guys, I got you. And they go and do the handoff, and Aldo shoots one of the many characters they call Herman, which is, it was a joke at the time, it just meant like soldier. And Landa's like, what? No, what are you doing? I like negotiated for that man's life. And he's like, they're not gonna mind if he's dead, they just want you. And it's like, I'll just be chewed out, I've been chewed out before. And then they brand him with a swastika, and that is
which they definitely do not cut away from.
No, they do not. Oh, speaking of cutaways, I do, as perverse as the scalping is, him talking to BJ Novak and they cut away to him just casually just scalping a guy and going, yeah, I agree, and then cutting back again. It's like, what?
Are you going to go with that as the shot? Because I feel like that is the defining shot that a lot of people
put up on the them both looking at camera and it's like, this is my finest work yet. Is this supposed to be meta with Quentin thinking as he wrote it, this is my finest film yet? Like, I am Aldo Rain or whatever.
Maybe.
Yeah, and your movie ends and it's like, yeah, Landa, you keep winning and you didn't quite win this. I mean, he gets to go to America, but he will forever be branded. It is Snyder Batman levels of justice here. That he will live out his days and everyone will know he was a Nazi. And yeah, like, it's amazing in a film where they kill Hitler that's not the final scene. And it's like you said, it's like Hitler is almost incidental to this story about Landa, about Shoshana, about the Basterds, and yeah, it ends, and I didn't hate it, but I don't like Quentin Tarantino still.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, at least you didn't hate it. So where does it rank? Is it better than Jackie Brown for you, or do you think Jackie Brown?
I'd rather go watch Jackie Brown again than watch this again. I will remember this for the acting performances, and I will remember the tension of those interrogation scenes. But beyond that, I'm just like, I can't get past the parts about Quentin Tarantino that I dislike, and this didn't do anything to dissuade that. And it's not like we didn't go into this thinking that like I was going to see this and be like, I see the light. I love Pulp Fiction now.
Yeah, no, I 100% didn't. I was just like, this is one that I really enjoy, and I think the things that I enjoy about it, there's enough of them that you would not abjectly hate it. And
I didn't sit there having a bad time. I think it is a good movie. I wouldn't single it out. Like, I wouldn't put it on a list, but this is our list collaboratively, and like I can see why it got acclaim and why it is some people's favourite Quentin Tarantino movie and this, that and the other. But yeah, for me it is about the big powerhouse performances and those like amazing actor showcase scenes and everything, and Mike Myers, quite frankly. We've done it. I've managed it. I got through a Quentin Tarantino movie, and I got through a war movie, and that's for war movies, right, Ben?
It's not, sadly.
It is not.
I mean, I guess we're confirming it now. We can still do Zombieland if you really want.
No, so originally we put a poll out between A History of Violence and Zombieland, and much to the chagrin of one Mike Thomas, Zombieland won. And I kept telling you, dude, I picked Zombieland, but like, you can fully just pick History of Violence, I don't care. And you put it to the vote and Zombieland won, but as we kept going through, it kept feeling like a little bit too silly of a pick. And Hurt Locker kept coming up, and it was like, fuck it, let's do Hurt Locker. Let's have another female director. Let's make Matt watch a full-on war movie. This is all a long way of saying next week, our final episode of this volume, another war movie. You've managed to talk me into doing Quentin Tarantino and 2 war movies.
And 2 war movies. But we are doing our third Best Picture winner.
Yes. I think this makes more sense. So that will be next week. Until then, go to entertherealworld.com. Like, comment, subscribe. We have many, many podcasts. We have many, many things that can be read. Not recently, but go back and check the archive. We have a whole listicles tab on the left of the site. I listen to Flooping the Pig, an Adventure Time podcast. Listen to the Superhero Pantheon. And Mike and I will have a Christmas special coming out. It might be out right now when you listen to this.
This episode is releasing on the 21st of December, so
I would imagine it will be out. And yeah, we will see you next week for our final episode of Volume 1 of There Will Be Movies, The Hurt Locker. Ben, I've just answered the question. There will be one more movie, but, you know, just will there be movies?
We will confirm next week when we announce what we're doing next.
Bye, everybody. Go kill some Nazis.